I'm Richard Madden. I'm the Territory Manager for Pacific Seeds. I cover the Central West, Southwest slopes and plains and also the Central Ranges. I have territory that goes effectively from Goulburn out to Nyngan and from Canola down to Wagga. So this whole area which Central West farming systems cover pretty much fits into my territory as well. So very pleased, and thanks to the opportunity for Central West Farming Systems to come along and be part of the Field Day Roadshow for this year. And yeah, hopefully we try to make this as interactive as we can. So if you've got any questions throughout my presentation, please don't hesitate to ask those, or if you've got a point that you'd like to add to the conversation, please jump in at any time that you feel necessary. So I had a pretty wide brief. Scott's asked me to put together some information in relation to diseases on canola. We're going to talk about some maturity drivers in wheat and why you might select certain varieties for your farming systems. And also we've got 2 new wheat varieties that Pacific Seeds are bringing to market this year, and we'll touch on those and go through some of the information on those for you as well. So we'll start off at the top, being with disease in canola. So most of you guys here would be regular canola growers, so there's probably not necessarily too much new information here. It's probably more so a little bit of a revisit, if you like. So effectively there are 4 main diseases of canola which we see. Most of these diseases are in the seedling stage and the rosette stage. Apart from sclerotinia, we don't generally see anything beyond that stage. A lot of disease in canola is a bit like us having a flu. We feel a bit crap for a while, we feel a bit lazy, we don't really do much, we sort of lay about, and canola reacts pretty much the same way. It feels a bit crook, it looks a bit off, it plays about, it doesn't really grow, and over time the canola will grow through the disease. So in terms of what the 4 diseases are, we'll touch on Downy Mildew, white leaf spot, which are minor diseases, I suppose, of the 4 we're touching on, blackleg and sclerotinia. So in terms of Downy Mildew, sorry about the screen colour here. So it presents on the leaves, like a yellow spot, if you like. It occurs mostly in the seeding stage, but also in that sort of 2 to 6 leaf stage as well. Infection always and most often occurs under cool, moist conditions, and often in leaves which are in contact with the soil. The Downy Mildew disease, as you can hopefully make out here, makes the disease look mottled and as I said, yellow in appearance. The disease is spread by rain splash. Generally after about that 6 to 8 leaf stage, the canola will grow out of it. It doesn't have a massive economic impact on yield, and it's also not necessarily something that we'd spray for. But it's something that we need to be aware of, because sometimes we might look at a plant and say, geez, this doesn't look too happy, or it looks a little bit unhealthy. So what is it, what do we need to do? In terms of management for Downy Mildew, look, it's not something that we'd spray for, unless there was some underlying issue that was presenting beyond that we might need to look at. So if it was Downy Mildew that was presenting over the top of some blackleg, and the blackleg was getting quite serious, like we've seen particularly in Western Australia this year, then we might need to consider doing something about some sort of management for the disease. But as I said, it's a bit like a flu. We'll grow out of it in sort of 10 days to 2 week time. White leaf spot presents quite similarly to what blackleg does. So what it does is cause white lesions on the leaves, which are circled down here, with sort of dead black centres in the middle of the lesions. The main difference between a white leaf spot lesion and a blackleg lesion is there's no fruiting bodies in these lesions. Again, it's most commonly found in that sort of 2 to 6 leaf stage. Crop crops which are nutrient deficient. So this year, where we've had crops which were sown early and then have had a lot of rain on them early, have presented with some of this disease. So typically, again, in Western Australia, where our colleagues work over there, we've seen a lot of white leaf spot this year, where they had a lot of big, bulky crops early, and then had a heap of rain, and then got a lot of disease in them. So the white leaf spot fungus survives on the stubble canola as a thick-walled mycelium. As I said, they differ because from blackleg lesions because they don't have the fruiting bodies. Also, most prevalent when our autumn conditions are wet and we've got wind, and it spreads rapidly through that sort of wet canopy from leaf to leaf. As I said, again, a bit like Downy Mildew, not necessarily something that we would go out and control with a fungicide, but if it was presenting as part of another complex of disease, then it might be something that we look to control. So blackleg, most people here would be aware of blackleg and its implications in terms of managing our crop and in terms of the implications for disease. Typically, if left unchecked and we get severe blackleg infection, we can potentially reduce our yields by sort of 20 to 25% straight off the bat. The good thing about blackleg is that most varieties have a reasonable level of seedling resistance, so we're able to manage the crop through the natural defences of the plant. So this is effectively the blackleg cycle. So the blackleg disease itself survives on the stubble from the previous summer. As that stubble breaks down and we start to get autumn rainfall, the stubble releases the spores. The spores then go into the environment, and as we get more rainfall and humid conditions, the spores reproduce. Once our crops are up and growing, these spores will settle on the cotyledons, causing the lesions. And then once they're into the plant, they then start to reproduce again and again and again. And the more blackleg spores we have, if we've got heavy stubble loads from either the year previous or in the field previous or in that general area, the more blackleg spores there are, the more spores we have. So in terms of the blackleg disease itself, it reproduces sexually, and every spore is genetically different. So it's not just a matter of saying, well, we'll put one fungicide out for blackleg and we'll control it, because it doesn't quite work that way. So in terms of when we say we are trying to develop new resistances or new pathways of resistance to blackleg, it's really difficult because it's a huge spectrum. So we're not necessarily dealing with the same fungus background all the time. So when the blackleg infects the plant, as we know, it grows into the plant's vascular system and then progresses down into the crown of the plant. And this is what causes our crown cankers and our stem cankers, which effectively reduce the xylem flow in the plant over time. And the worse the canker is, the higher amount of xylem which is restricted within the plant. And we all have seen the different types of cankers in terms of fully cankered to minor infections, and we can assess our blackleg disease by cutting stems. And all that information is covered. I've got with me the latest blackleg management guide, which is over here on the table, and that goes through how to cut your stems and what to look for and how to assess the risk for blackleg in your paddock. In terms of resistance, there's two types of resistance. There's major gene resistance, which is the seedling resistance, and as I said, this is the ability for the cotyledon or the plant to fight the infection and stop it progressing down into the crown. So when we talk about blackleg ratings or blackleg resistance within our cultivars, this is the resistance that we're talking about. So if something's rated as an R to MR disease resistance, its likelihood of developing cankers is less than something which is rated as, say, an MS or an S rated variety. Also, it's important to understand that when we talk about blackleg ratings, that we're talking about our bare seed ratings, because as soon as you put a fungicide like Jockey or Maxim on top of your bare seed, you automatically lift the rating to the next level. So if you're in a high blackleg pressure area, you would typically want to be growing the highest rated cultivars you can at a bare seed level before you then put your fungicide on to give you the extra protection that product provides. There's also minor gene resistance in terms of adult plant resistance to blackleg. It's less effective against fighting the disease, and typically most canola plants will overcome blackleg without the necessity to add some sort of chemical control. However, we have seen again in Western Australia this year, and also some parts of southern New South Wales and into Victoria, where growers have had to consider coming in with a fungicide early in their program to get on top of their blackleg pressure because it's been excessively bad. If we've got blackleg, if we've got a plant that might be yay high and it's cabbaged quite nicely, as long as our growth points, which are at the top, are clean of blackleg, the plant will continue to grow away. If that whole plant from the top to the bottom is covered in blackleg cankers, then you need to consider that you might have to look at doing some sort of additional control to help that plant out.
Richard?
Yes?
I get the impression you're assuming we've seen blackleg, but we haven't.
You may not have seen it if you're not in a high rotation, high canola rotation area. You may not typically see a lot of blackleg. It's not to say that it's not there, but also it might depend on the cultivars that you're growing and their ability to fight the disease through their resistance rating. Where we see the most blackleg is obviously in these higher rainfall areas, I guess from sort of Park South, where we get either 1 in 3 or 1 in 2 canola rotation years. And typically where blackleg is becoming more of an issue is in that sort of Wagga, Cootamundra, up to Young, sort of through that belt where they've been growing a lot of canola year in, year out for probably the last 20 years. And so we're now starting to see blackleg resistance starting to break down, particularly to the Group A cultivars. So anything that's got a Group A background, and examples of that would be something like a Gem or a Mako, even some of our varieties which have triple stacks, which would be an A, a B and a D background. Anything that's got an A background resistance rating is now being seen as susceptible to blackleg. And as part of the blackleg management guide, you can go, I believe the work is done through New South Wales DPI and GRDC partnership. You can go into your districts and you can find what the blackleg prevalence is and what the pressure is in relation to disease from blackleg in your area. Importantly, once you've got blackleg, it does take quite a long time to effectively get rid of it. So if you're growing a lot of lupins, we're seeing a lot of lupins in a lot of areas this year. That can be a carrier. Likewise, it can be for sclerotinia. Or if you grow your canola next to where you grew your canola last year, or within close proximity, so the guidelines are if you can get 500 metres or further away, then you're in the least likelihood risk of spores biting from the previous stubble into your new crop. Or if you, as I said, if you widen your rotations to 1 in 4 years or 1 in 5 years, or if you just opt not to grow canola at all for, say, 2 years on your farm full stop, that's another good way of minimising your blackleg risk as well.
Yeah, this is not an area like Judy or somewhere where you see more and more canola.
No, it's not, but I think...
But it might develop.
Yeah, it might do, yeah. And on top of that, when we look at our global grain pricing, and our friends from ADM might touch on it later, when we look at our global crop pricing, oilseed has really been consistently strong for the last 12 months and looks like being consistently strong for another 12 months. So at sowing time, we're heading into sowing, that might be the driver for some growers to say, hey, I want to put in an extra 20% of the area to canola this year, which I wouldn't normally do, particularly if our coarse grains prices remain low. So there is another form of blackleg which is starting to develop, I guess, and this is around aerial blackleg. So this is where we're getting infection well beyond the seedling or the cabbaging stage, and we're starting to get infection up into the upper canopy and into the stems. So this has effectively come about in the last 2 years, where growers and advisors are now trying to get us to seed our canola a lot earlier in the seeding window. So typically any of these early April sowings are more prone to aerial blackleg, whereas what we've seen this year, our experience this year in the field, is that any of our canola sowings that were sown later, and so later I'll be saying more so in that first week of May, our disease pressure has been a lot less in those crops than what it has been for those that were sown in the early autumn and April period. So why is aerial blackleg occurring? Time of sowing is one. Secondly is we're growing bigger, more bulkier canopies, and all our varieties are talking about more bulk, and we want to have bulk, we want ground cover, and we want all this biomass to drive yield, because we know that biomass in canola does drive yield. But by sowing earlier and having these bigger bulky canopies, we're inducing our flowering time earlier, and so we're now flowering when we're more likely to have more frequent rainfall events. So we've got frequent rainfall, moisture in the canopy, we've got potentially a lot of disease on the lower leaves, and as that crop elongates and begins to flower, those spores are still cycling and more likely to land on the upper parts of the plant. So aerial blackleg, if it was to infect a stem like this, that point of infection renders that whole stem dead. So that will then progress from that all the way back down to the crown and cause you canker on that whole stem. So aerial blackleg can become quite an issue in our crops, particularly if we've got big bulky crops and we're sowing those crops early. Aerial blackleg will also infect the flowers, and that'll either result in flower abortion or missing peduncles, so we're then not getting pollination either. So sclerotinia, moving on, is our last, I guess our most important disease in canola. Most people would have come across sclerotinia at some point in time. Typically, if you find a piece of canola stubble and you break it open and you've got black dots in the centre of that stubble, that's your sclerotinia in the stubble. So interesting with sclerotinia, once you've had sclerotinia on your farm, it takes a long time for sclerotinia to disappear. So trials have shown that even after 10 years of no canola, you've still got sclerotinia in your soil. If you tillage and bury the sclerates, it doesn't have any effect on reducing the numbers. They'll still be in the soil, and again, they can last for up to 10 years in the soil. So it's quite a significant disease, and it's also one which has the ability to cause the most economic loss from yield potential. Interestingly, sclerotinia hosts on over 400 species, and capeweed is one of its major hosts, as are lupins. So if you've got lots of and there's heaps of capeweed around this year, it's a great host for sclerotinia, and lots of guys are growing lupins this year. So typically, if you're thinking about putting your canola back into a lupin stubble, you should be assessing your lupin stubble for your risk of sclerotinia as well. So effectively the cycle is that the sclerates live in the soil, as we see up here. They reproduce in the autumn, and they grow like little mushrooms, if you like, called apothecia. As they grow in the soil, they then release spores which flow through the canopy. The spores land on the flower petals, infecting the flowers, and where those flower petals drop, typically which is on a junction of a stem and a branch, it will effectively kill that part of the plant. But it only kills that part of the plant. Unlike a blackleg canker, it doesn't develop down the stem, it just kills that part of the plant and renders that part of the plant dead. So you can effectively have a main stem which, if it was infected on one side, would be dead, but could be quite healthy and potting on the other side of the plant. So, as I said, humid, wet conditions will favour the disease the most. We can spray for sclerotinia, and typically we use Presaro for that at about that 20% flowering, which gives us a fair length of protection. It is also possible to come in with a second application if you needed to, or if your yield potential warranted the expense of doing so.